Hey YouTube. So long time no see. I know. Camera's been broken. No, didn't have a laptop, then my camera broke, and then everything else in the world happened. But I have a little bit of exciting news. So I had an interview today with the Sephora inside of my local JCPenney's. So I want to tell you guys about the process, what it was like, all that other fun stuff. So essentially, I went to Sephora last week to ask. Well, one, I needed makeup remover wipes and something else. And I ran out of my favorite lip balm. But I went in and I'm like, okay, well, let me ask if they're hiring. So I did, and I guess it was the manager that I spoke to. But she's like, yeah, we're hiring part time right now. Just go online, fill out an application, and we actually have open interviews on Wednesdays. So I was like, oh, okay. So I went online, couldn't fill out an application, called back, and the woman over the phone told me, oh, hey, yeah, you can still come in. Went in on Wednesday, and sure enough, couldn't come in because, like, oh, well, we can't pull up anyone's applications right now, so come back next Wednesday, which kind of sucked because I was on a very long break at work. But anyway, so what happened next was, as of yesterday, I went and I filled out the application again, and this time, or well, I filled out the application for the first time, and I noticed that it said full time on application, so I'm hoping that that still stands true, that there are full time positions available. If it's just still part time, that's fine. But anyway, I filled out the application in its wholeness, attached my resume, saved it, got an email confirmation that I went through, and then I went to the store today. So there were about 12 people waiting, including myself. And like I said, this was an open interview. So as long as you submitted the application online, anyone could come, no matter what job at JCPenney's you were interested in. So it didn't matter if you were doing for Sephora, for sales associate, cash rep, whatever other the positions were. If you're applying for it, you could come in and do a group interview that day for it. Now, allow me to explain a couple things, or one thing anyway, that bothered me. Just because the interview is called an open interview does not mean go in looking like you walked off the street onto the interview. Jeans and tennis shoes are a no-no. Like if you're trying to, I'm gonna do a video on proper job application clothing attire later because I worked in a career management center and my mom's been on a management team at different places for a long period of time, so I know what they're looking for. And a couple of those things just bothered me. But anyway, so about 12 of us there. Woman came out, said hello, asked us to write out our names on a piece of paper so she could get our applications out of the system and print them off. So went through that. She called us in small. Essentially, she called us in one by one, but it was a steady flow of one by one. So like Aaron, Martha, blah 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 blah, whoever else was there. So after that, we were all taken back into this room, and there were two tables with 6 chairs each. So we were explained, and the table that I sat at had blocks on it, which is kind of why I sat on it because I wanted to play with the blocks. And that's exactly what I got to do. So there were two people. There was a gentleman and another woman, and the gentleman was the service supervisor, or the human resources manager, and the woman there was his supervisor. So they're both going to overlook the entire interview process with us. So they asked everybody to introduce themselves. They asked one, your name, introduce yourself. Two, tell them a little bit about yourself. And three, give them why you're interested in working at JCPenney's. So everybody went around, did that. Now, my advice for this portion is don't give them your whole life story. One woman, it was longer than 2 minutes, and really idealistically, I think that's a word. Let's go with it. Idealistically, you should at least keep it a minute or under. You don't need to take up everybody's time like that. But after that, we were split off into the two tables, and first table, my table, had both the blocks in the center, and then there were pieces of paper and pens in front of each chair as well. And what happened was the gentleman explained to us that we were going to be playing a game, and it was a team exercise. So the objective of the game was he would hold up a little iPad with a picture on it. You had 10 seconds to look over the picture in its entirety, and you had 60 seconds to tell the rest of the group what you saw, and you had to try to get them to build it. It was interesting Because the thing was, during those 10 seconds, during those 60 seconds, while you were looking at the iPad, you were not allowed to touch the box. And I think I touched the box like twice, and I kept telling myself, no. And I apologized every time I did it because it was habit. Okay, well, let me help fit. Nope, I couldn't. I had to stay hands off. Our tower did fall down once, and it was so sad because we had to start all over again. And it is timed. You only have 15 minutes to complete the whole exercise. We got close enough to done, and then like one of the little tiles slid off the top, and then another one did. But it was okay. I think everybody actually had fun during the activity. And the second activity was with the woman. So the woman gave us each a piece of paper, and it had 4 idea blocks on it. And she asked us off the bat, who here watches Shark Tank? So it was only me and another guy that knew what Shark Tank was. And I explained that it was, you are presenting your idea that you would like funded to a group of 4 billionaires. So what happens is you have to, from the 4 ideas, and the ideas in everybody's paper are different sets of ideas. So on one girl's, it had, what did she have? A DIY thing. I don't know what her other 3 were. And on mine, I know I had a fashion show, a mini fashion show, a movie theater, a Xbox arcade, and something else. And the other people had different things. So essentially, the goal was, if they were to take an idea from you got to pick one of the 4 ideas, and you had to pitch it to the team and essentially make them want to have your idea be the one out in the middle of the JCPenney floor. So explain why it was a good idea, why it would bring them revenue, and the whole market was for the kids department. So whatever idea you presented was for the children's department. So I know that it didn't take, and again, I think this is one of those things where it shouldn't have taken any longer than 2 to 3 minutes. A couple people went over. My advice for this portion is just go for it. Don't be nervous. Stand up, act like you're presenting, because the whole purpose of the activity was to pitch an idea. The girl that went before me, and now she was also applying for the Sephora position. And I think what kind of killed her a little bit, from the get-go, she didn't say hello to the group, she didn't introduce herself. She didn't stand up while she was talking. She didn't look at the group at all while she was talking. She strictly looked at the woman that was doing the hiring. And if the goal was to pitch the idea to the group, then I think that was a bit of a problem. In my eyes, I could be completely and totally wrong. The woman did ask her a couple of extra questions, and part 2 of where I think things we might have gone a little wrong was that the way she responded, you could, yes, things are coming up off the top of your head, but you want to say it with enough confidence so you can be completely wrong. But they're going to look at you and nod their heads like you're right, because you look like you know what you're talking about. But there was a lot of eye squinting and ums and yeahs, and it didn't flow well. It wasn't coherent. So that, to me, was a bad pitch. The woman did ask her a couple extra questions, and she answered them to the best of her ability. But again, you want to have your execution be as well as you can. Mine, I did the idea of an Xbox arcade, because like I said, mine were movie theater, Xbox arcade, and little fashion show in the children's department. I don't even remember what the 4th idea was. And I did Xbox arcade because I love Xbox. So I presented my idea, why I thought it'd be a good idea, what the setup was going to be like, how it could bring in money, what it meant to the customer. And she actually didn't have any extra questions for me. But she did have questions for each of the other people that went after me. So I think, and I could be wrong, because I don't know when they're calling back or if they're calling back. But I think the fact that I didn't get asked any questions meant that I explained everything well enough so she didn't have anything else to wonder about. Because some people she had to ask 1 additional question, some people she asked like 3, and one of the girls in my group, she had to, or no, I'm not say girl because she was an older woman. One of the women in my group had to flat out ask her, and what was your idea again? Or what was your idea? Which one was this? And I think that was bad, because you need to tell them what your idea is off the bat, and then go from there. So that was part 2. And then after that, they just opened it up to open questions. So, somebody asked what was the, what is the word I'm looking for? What were the options? So, like, there was sales floor, Sephora, and something else that I cannot think of right now because all I really cared about was Sephora. I'm not gonna lie. And there were two other girls aside from me that were there for Sephora. I think my makeup was the brightest. And granted, I knew that the interview was going to go like this, but I still did bright makeup anyway because I wanted to show off I know what I'm doing. The other girl, what was in my group from Sephora, she had a rather natural face, but then she had golden, black, and brown eyes. One of her eyelashes was kind of coming off at the end. I don't really know if anyone else could have noticed it because they weren't sitting next to her, but I did, and it was kind of bugging me, but I wasn't sure what to say because I didn't want to be rude about it. And she could have blended a little bit more. And the second girl, the third girl, I suppose, that was interviewing for Sephora, she had a pretty natural look. Her brows were very well done because, mine are a hot mess like most of the time because I don't really know what to do with them. I tried to fill them a little bit today. But anyway, very well put together. Other than the flip-flops, there were flip-flops, and that bothered. Personally, you shouldn't wear flip-flops to an interview. But that's just my opinion. Anyway, the other question was pay rate, and they explained that your rate of pay is determined on your experience that you have in retail, and that gets discussed because if you do get a call back, you will get a call back for a second interview, and that's where they will discuss everything with you. And the last question was about flexibility. So the gentleman said JCPenney's hires for, they have, if you want to do, they have it so your schedule can be flexible. If you can work all week, great. They like it if you have a flexible schedule. If there's one day a week that you can't work, that's fine. But the minimum requirement is that you have to be able to work Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. If you can only work one other day during the week or one certain set of hours on like a Tuesday and a Thursday, as long as you work Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, you're fine. You can be considered. But if you cannot work Friday, Saturday, and Sunday because it is retail, and where I'm at, it's a pretty busy mall on the weekends, and it's crazy during Black Friday, then he's like, we don't even consider those applications. And that was it for the entirety of the interview. I went up, shook his hand, shook the woman's hand that I had, that did the supervisor's hand. I shook her hand, said goodbye, tried to be pleasant as possible, and went ahead and left out. So overall, I think I did pretty well. Don't want to toot my own horn yet. I don't want to count my chickens before they hatch because who knows? I don't know what that other girl from Sephora that applied for the Sephora position was like because she wasn't at my table. The one that was at my table could have used a little bit more work, but who am I to say? In their eyes, she could have been great, and in their eyes, I could have been terrible. Who knows? But, I'll find out within the next couple of days, because the one thing nobody asked, and it hit me after I left, was that nobody asked, when should we expect a call back from you if you're going to call back? So, it's one of those things where I'm really going to wait. I'm going to give it till, let's say, next Wednesday. So I'm going to give it a full week and see what happens. I know I am going to send an email to the hiring manager to say thank you for the interview and for spending time with us today and all that fun stuff. And yeah, that is really it. So if there's a part 2, and I hope there's a part 2 because that would be great, then I will update and let you guys know. And if there's not a part 2, well then, I tried. And yeah, that's all I can think of. But that is all. So I hope this was helpful to you guys in some kind of way. I'm sorry that it's so long. I just wanted to be as thorough as I possibly could. And again, I think I'm going to do a video or at least a blog post. I'm going to let you guys know when I do the blog post about proper interview attire because some of the things I saw today were downright ridiculous. Ridiculous. Open interview does not mean dress however you want. But anyway, until then, later YouTube.